And another thing, one of the other contributing factors to unwanted weight gain, as well as hunger and cravings, is hormone responses. And so hormones are chemicals that are produced in the body. They are signals. They are communication signals to relay messages from one part of the body to other parts of the body to tell the body to turn on things, turn off things, upregulate processes, downregulate processes, to basically control what's going on in the body. And we have so many different hormones in the body. And then there's different biochemical processes in the body that will activate or deactivate hormones in hormone production. So I'm going to just very quickly explain a few different hormones that are key hormones in terms of hunger, weight gain, and food cravings, so that you can sort of understand where this is coming from. So insulin is one that is a very important hormone in terms of weight management, as well as cravings and inflammation. And so insulin is a hormone that's produced in the pancreas. It has many different functions. One of the in particular functions that it has is when we consume sugar and carbohydrates. Sugar is a carbohydrate. We have three major macronutrients that all food is comprised of. And those macronutrients are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So these three things are what comprises all of every food that we eat. And so sugar is a carbohydrate. Starch is also a carbohydrate. Sugars and starches starches just take a little bit more time to be broken down in the intestine before they're absorbed into the bloodstream, whereas most sugars will be absorbed much more quickly. And so when sugar is absorbed into the bloodstream can only hold about the equivalent of 1 teaspoon of sugar in the circulation at one time. That's about 4 grams. Any more sugar than that in the bloodstream can contribute to inflammation of the blood vessels, and it can lead to, over time, destruction of blood vessels, especially tiny blood vessels. And so insulin is a hormone that is released from the pancreas, and one of its jobs is to open up doors. It's a very basic explanation, but it opens up channels. They're kind of like doors to help to shunt that blood sugar from the bloodstream into places of storage. So things like into your muscles, to be used later as fuel, into your liver, and so your muscles can only hold approximately 2,000 calories worth of sugar in storage form. So any more sugar in your bloodstream needs to go somewhere else. So one of the other things that happens then is that the excess sugar is then converted into fat and is stored as fat in various places underneath the skin, as well as around your organs, especially around your liver and around your pancreas. And it's those places that are the most dangerous places. The more fat that we have accumulated around the liver and the pancreas, the higher your chances for developing all sorts of issues like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and more. If you want to learn more about insulin, because this is a huge topic and I can only talk about so much of it in this presentation, this is a really great book. It's called The Diabetes Code. It's written by Dr. Jason Fung. He is a medical doctor in Toronto, Ontario, and he's written this book as well as The Obesity Code, which I can't show you because my laptop is being propped up on it right now. But these are two fantastic books, and he talks a lot about insulin and the role insulin plays in terms of diabetes, as well as weight management and food cravings. And so insulin truly is a huge player. And so in terms of one of the take-home messages here, in terms of weight management and cravings control, is that insulin, when we have huge surges of insulin over and over and over again in our body, that's what causes a lot of problems. Insulin is a storage hormone, so it causes us to store blood glucose as well as fat. And so one of the keys in terms of regulating food cravings and weight management is to keep insulin in check, to prevent high spikes of insulin, as well as to give your body a break from insulin, so have periods of time where your body isn't producing insulin. I'll get more into that in a little bit later, but just to just to recap on that is that blood sugar is the thing that's going to spike insulin the most. And so it's key to understand that controlling how much sugar you're eating and how often is really going to help in terms of managing this hormone response from insulin. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask in the chat box. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to send me an email, michelle@wellbalance.ca. And if you're watching from my webpage, so in the menu, there is an option for contact. If you click on contact, there is an option. You can either fill out a form online or there's a link to send me an email. So I am more than happy to answer questions after the fact about this presentation. Now, leptin is another hormone that's really interesting and really important. Leptin is a hormone that's produced in the fat cells, and it tells the brain, so the more fat cells you have and the more full those fat cells are, it's kind of an indication that we have enough energy stored. And so that will trigger the production of leptin, which will tell the brain, okay, I've eaten enough. And so we can turn off our hunger signals right now. I can stop eating. Now the thing is that we think, okay, well, with our obesity crisis in our in our society, why are so many people hungry? And so the thing is with leptin is that there's a huge association in terms of leptin regulation and insulin sensitivity. And so the thing is that first of all, with insulin, if we have insulin spikes over and over again, too much, too often, eventually our tissues and our cells are going to stop becoming sensitive to insulin. We stop getting the message. It's kind of like white noise, right? If we hear it over, like if you're living beside a train, eventually you're not going to hear the train anymore. It's kind of like the same thing with our cells in our body. And what happens is that with insulin sensitivity, if we stop becoming sensitive to insulin, it can actually affect how our brain is becoming sensitive to leptin. So we can actually then develop leptin insensitivity. And so what that means is, yes, we might be producing large amounts of leptin from our fat cells saying, hey, okay, I have enough energy stored, but the brain isn't getting the message from leptin. The brain cells are no longer being sensitive to the leptin message anymore because of this association with insulin and insulin insensitivity. And Dr. Jason Fung goes into those details in his book as well. So I don't get anything from suggesting the book. I just think it's an amazing book. So I want to pass that along to you. Ghrelin is another hormone. It's a hunger hormone. It's produced in the stomach. And it is a hormone that actually tells your brain, I'm hungry, I need to eat. There's a few different things that can regulate and modulate ghrelin. One of the things that can help to reduce the production of ghrelin is when the stomach stretches. So when we eat food and the stomach starts to stretch from eating, that can actually help to reduce the amount of ghrelin that's being produced to help to reduce the level of hunger that we have. And I will explain a little bit later. So one of the things in particular that's going to help with that stomach stretching more than others would be low starch vegetables, because there's a lot of fiber and a lot of water, so there's a lot of bulk. So that will cause stretching more than other things. So that can temporarily help to increase fullness, but it does take time to get for that message of stretching to tell the stomach, okay, stop producing ghrelin, and then it takes time for that message to get up to the brain. It takes a good 20 to 30 minutes for the brain to start to get the message from those stretch receptors in the stomach, okay, I've eaten enough. And I'll mention that again later and why that's important in terms of the speed that you're eating. And cortisol is a hormone that's produced in the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are little glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And so Cortisol is a hormone that's produced when we are experiencing stress. So when the sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight response is activated, this can trigger the release of various stress hormones, including cortisol. And cortisol can affect how blood sugar is being regulated as well as insulin. So there's a strong association there, as well as it can affect how your immune system is functioning, and it can trigger inflammation, which I'll explain in a moment. And so this is, and I'll explain it again in a little bit, why stress hormone and uncontrolled and unregulated stress hormone can contribute to unwanted weight gain, as well as food cravings. Melatonin is a hormone that's produced in the brain, and it is a hormone that tells your body, okay, I can go into a deep, restful sleep. So it's produced at nighttime, and it can affect metabolism if it's not being produced in adequate amounts, as well as when we're producing melatonin. If we eat while we're producing melatonin, it can actually affect the metabolism of that food that we've eaten. So this is one of the many reasons why it's a good idea to avoid late night eating. Because if we're producing melatonin at the same time, it can negatively impact our metabolism. And there's so many other hormones to consider, but these are the top ones.